Welcome back, everybody, to the Transfer Portal CFE, presented by NoContextCFB. I am Adam. I got my boy Dylan with me today. Dylan, how we doing?
Oh man, this is the last thing I got on the docket today. Been a very long day, but I'm excited, man. Just kind of sitting back, talking some ball a little bit. Very excited.
As relaxed, talk about the offseason. These are going to start ramping up here soon. I'm excited. I need the spring ball to happen. I'm kind of getting itchy,
It's only been 2 weeks.
2 weeks is too long. But be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy the show. First, we're going to thank everybody for 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. We finally reached it. Seemed like it took forever, but we finally ramped it up. So thank you everybody that has subscribed. If you haven't yet, be sure to do so because we got a lot of content coming out this off season. Grind never stops. So let's get right into it. So Nick Saban, he has some choices to make on offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Dylan, who do you think is going to get the nod for either one or both?
I think this is a kind of a weird time in Alabama football, doesn't it feel like? Because it's been, a couple years since they won a natty, which, usually who cares? It's been a couple years since your team won a national championship. But it's Alabama we're talking about. And Georgia's the rising power. I feel like there's some pressure a little bit on Alabama to make some moves here. So I know a lot of people on our Twitter were throwing out the Cliff Kingsbury thing, and if he's doing whatever in Thailand, and I don't know if he's going to take any calls out there. I think Dan Mullen is the most realistic option for Nick Saban. I know he's working at ESPN right now, but I feel like given the opportunity, I think Dan Mullen would come back into coaching. I feel like part of the pressure to make a really good hire for Alabama is look at what Clemson just did, getting Garrett Riley from TCU. Hiring him right after firing Streeter, which you had to think they were only going to fire Streeter if Garrett Riley was coming along. Dabo Swinney was very aggressive for once in fixing that offense, and I wouldn't say Alabama, their offense was broken by any means. There's a lot of gaps coming up with some of the guys off to the NFL draft, the transfer portal, and they were just kind of undisciplined last year on offense. A lot of penalties. They should have lost more games than they did because of some of that undiscipline. So, Dan Mullen has helped develop Alex Smith, Dak Prescott, Tim Tebow, to name a few, been a head coach for, 13 years at the SEC level, offensive coordinator, can help with recruiting. I think he's your guy at this point. Internally, I don't really think there's any guys that are screaming, already in the building at the offensive coordinator that you can hire from within. So I think Dan Mullen might be the move.
You don't think his lack of interest in recruiting be a problem for them?
I honestly don't know. I mean, if you're in the building at Alabama, I think you're going to be able to recruit. They've got more resources than just about anybody. He's been a head coach, so I'm sure that's going to be a draw. And I'm sure Nick Saban's not going to let his offensive coordinator be like, "No, I'm okay on the recruiting trail." I'm sure Nick Saban will convince him to do his part.
Yeah, I remember I saw Dan Mullen a lot, and he was one of my thoughts. But I remember he was in an interview. I think is he on CBS now?
I think he's ESPN, ABC.
Okay, yeah, it doesn't matter. And he was saying like he's been, he's happy right now. He hasn't missed his kids' games and stuff like that.
Sure.
If I don't know if he's ready to go back into college football where it's just nonstop. If you're not coaching the game, you're on the road trying to go see a kid. If I agree though, if he's up for it, I think he's one of the best options. I was thinking about initially, my first thought was Joe Brady. Mm-hmm. Right. He's not at Carolina anymore. He's the Bills QB coach. Right. I think so. I don't know if he wants to go back to college. Alabama is kind of, it's kind of a stepping stone. Nick Saban, you work for Nick Saban, you can work for anybody. But so Joe Brady was something I thought about. And I know you mentioned the penalties, and his teams are known for having a lot of penalties. I know personally. Jason Garrett, what do you think about that? What do you think about Jason?
I feel like he's
Garrett?
Yeah, I feel like he might be in the same kind of boat as Mullen, maybe. It's like because he's doing the whole TV thing now, and there was
Mhm.
talk with him about Stanford. There was kind of heat out of nowhere that he might take that job, and then he came clean and was like, "No, I'm happy with where I'm at with NBC." So, um, I have seen that name a couple times, but I'd be pretty surprised if Nick Saban gave him a call. But at the college level, maybe I think that would work.
He's worked under Nick Saban, didn't he? At Miami, maybe. I
Um,
think he did.
Not a
So
question I know the answer to.
I think he did. So that might be something. I mean, who knows? He has to get it right though. You can't have another bad season like that. I mean, Bill O'Brien was anybody could have told you that was a disaster. I feel like. So what about DC? Who do you think?
You meant Miami Dolphins when you're talking about Garrett, right? Is that what you
Yeah.
were talking about? Okay. Yeah, yeah. No, I got you. Yeah, he was there. Um, Defensive coordinator, I think the easiest, most realistic option would be Todd Grantham. He's right down the hall. He's in the building. He's an analyst for Nick Saban already. He's been a Nick Saban guy. You're talking about Jason Garrett as a Nick Saban guy. Todd Grantham's been there since the Michigan State days, and has worked at the NFL level all over college football as well. I think outside of Alabama, Jim Leonard is a good one. He's out there now. Wisconsin didn't bring him back. Um, Young defensive coordinator, if you want to go along with some of the trends within college football, 40 years old, but has a lot of really good experience. Tough 3-4 defense, hard nose. Alabama usually kind of runs that 3-4, but they have a lot of elite defensive back play. So sometimes you see the 4-2-5 more so. So I think it's definitely a good call to make would be Jim Leonard. I don't know what his priorities are. Not getting a call from Wisconsin for that job. It must kind of sting a little bit. It seemed like he had that in the bag, and then Luke Fickle came out of nowhere and took that job. So I wonder if he kind of wants to take a step back, even though he's 40 years old. Because I haven't really seen his name thrown around in any other conversations, NFL or college level. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think if they can pull off Jim Leonard, I mean, that's a home run, in my opinion. Um, Grantham, I heard a lot about him. I follow a lot of Alabama fans, and they seem like they don't want him. I think he's pretty much the same thing as Golding, which is like, why would you get rid of him if he's going to bring in the person that was below him? So they kind of want an outside hire. Um, I mean, I think Jim Leonard is. I mean, he should be their number one choice. I don't know much after that, but if they can get Jim Leonard, maybe they can catch Georgia. Maybe. Speaking of Georgia, do you think they've taken over Alabama as the dynasty in the college football, the big bad
Yeah,
wolf?
we've talked a lot about it, and another candidate you could bring up would be Glenn Schumann, the co-defense
Yes.
coordinator at Georgia. I think it would be
Mhm.
funny if Nick Saban took from Kirby Smart's realm of coaching under his tree. That would be really funny to me. But I honestly, before I didn't think Dan Lanning would leave, given the year that they had at Georgia, and then he goes off to Oregon. So you know, perhaps Schumann tries to.
Yeah.
It's not even a step up. I wouldn't even say it's a step up, and that goes into the question you just asked about has Georgia overtaken Alabama, which it kind of is starting to feel that way a little more realistically than some people might want to say, because Georgia recruiting, you win national championships, you're going to get recruiting, but regardless, they were doing well recruiting all over the country. They're a national brand. They have been for a long time. Kirby Smart, obviously one of the best in the business. That dude never stops. His staff never stops. So recruiting is never going to be a problem. Um, I think that Alabama is not that far away if Georgia has surpassed them. They're pretty close to me. But I think Alabama, to me, needs to make a really, I don't want to say splashy hires because, Alabama's never really been about the big splashy hires. They don't really need to be. But I think they need to make really smart hires, given where the state of college football is at, and given where Georgia is. And I don't want to say like LSU and TCU could catch them by any means, but LSU and Tennessee definitely have some promise as well. So Alabama, if you're Nick Saban, you don't want to fall too far. I don't think you want to settle with these coordinator positions at all.
Yeah. I think LSU can catch them. I think they have the pool power, they have the coaching, they have the money. There's no reason why they can't. So for that reason, I agree. Alabama, they have to get it right. As far as Georgia goes, I mean, I'm not gonna say I didn't see this coming. I didn't see it coming this fast.
Yeah.
When did Kirby Smart got 2018?
When did Kirby Smart become the head
Yeah.
coach? Yeah, I think it was 2018.
And I mean, 5 years, you win 2 national championships. So shout out to them. It seems like they lost so many players on defense and they got better.
Yeah, 17 actually was his first year.
17. Okay. Yeah. I mean, last year they lost all those players, first round picks. People were talking about them going 7-5.
They weren't.
And then they somehow
Let's
get
stop that.
better. And they might be better, even better next year. I mean, I don't see how you knock them down, but I think Bama's right there though. If they get the hires right.
You know what's really crazy about Georgia though? They don't need to use the transfer portal to be where they're at, which is insane to me. Because Alabama coming into this year, they brought in some instant impact guys. This year, not so much. I believe Maryland tight end CJ Dupree was the only one that they've got, as far as I can think of. In their recruiting class, Alabama's top of the line there. But Georgia doesn't need the transfer portal to kick ass the way that they're doing it. They're recruiting at a high level and they're developing at a high level. A lot of the guys that they've produced aren't 5 stars. Of course, they're littered with them. Some of those kids have been, seeing stars next to their names since they were like 14 years old. So, but of course, you got the guys like Stetson Bennett and the Lad McConkeys of the world, who weren't necessarily highly touted out of high school and are making a huge impact. And I think that's the difference between good teams and great teams is, yeah, you can recruit at a high level, but what can you do with the guys deep on the depth chart when they get there? Can you develop everybody head to toe on your roster? And Kirby Smart, you could say him and Nick Saban, there's nobody better than those two at that.
I agree. They are the best. We see that problem a lot. All these high level recruits, Oregon, Texas A&M, LSU for a while.
All right.
They get the recruits, but it's about how do you develop them to be superstars. And Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, they do it the best.
Oh yeah.
So, mentioning the transfer portal, who do you think? Which team won the transfer portal? Would you say?
Yeah, man. Transfer portal superlatives. I'm all about it.
Yes.
Starting to wrap it up a little bit, but it's hard to argue that Florida State didn't win this, man. Like Florida State absolutely killed it, and they killed it last year. They kind of killed it the year before. Not so much in volume, but in quality. Jermaine Johnson was one guy that popped off. And then this year Jared Verse was a big one. Grady Vance was another one. Jordan Travis even was a transfer. That was before the Mike Norvell era. But Trey Benson, leading rusher. Johnny Wilson, leading receiver. And they did it again this year. That tight end room is nasty at Florida State. Jaheim Bell, Kyle Morlock, guy you shouldn't sleep on. They loaded up in the defensive and offensive lines at the Power 5 level. Fentrell Cypress might have been the best defensive back easily in the transfer portal, and they picked him, in the middle of the week out of nowhere. It's like they were doing just fine in the transfer portal before they got him, and then that was just the cherry on top of the cherry on top of the cake. So Florida State, to me, absolutely killed it. I think Michigan is close behind him. Josiah Stewart, I think, was a steal. Absolutely. But Florida State, to me, every single addition that they made can make an impact.
You think that they're the favorite in the ACC?
If Clemson hadn't brought in Garrett Riley, I'd probably say yes. I like that hire a lot for Clemson, especially with the new young quarterback with Klubnik. I think there's more question marks with Clemson, which is weird to say, question marks with a Clemson team, because you usually have a lot of security at most positions. But I think Garrett Riley is a phenomenal hire. Came out of nowhere. I did not expect Dabo Swinney to make a hire of that level of splashiness, as we were talking about with Alabama. I don't think Clemson really needed to make a splashy hire, but they got as good a guy as there is. Broyles Award winner, one of the most elite offenses in the country. So I expect Clemson to be back next year, especially on offense. But Florida State, to me, I think is the more complete team. So if I had to bet money, I think Florida State looks pretty damn good. They got a lot of guys returning too. That's important to note.
Yeah, I agree. So for me, I was wrestling between these two teams. I was thinking about Nebraska because the way they've been cleaning up, it seems like the last 2 weeks, they always signing somebody. But I chose a little sleeper, USC. I think the USC Trojan in particular, they lost 3 offensive linemen, 3 starters on the O line. They lost Jordan Addison, of course. They lost their best running back, and they pretty much replaced all of that. They got 2 tackles. They got one from Florida and one from Wazoo. Really good. They got the wide receiver from oh my gosh,
Arizona.
Singer. Yeah, Singer from Arizona.
Yeah,
they got a running back. USC, they're in win now mode. There's no projects over there. You brought in Lincoln Riley, you got Caleb Williams. This is last year. They reload, they retool, they're ready to make a run. So I think they're the biggest winners.
And defensively, I mean, an Alex Grinch led defense kind of scares you no matter what. But I think they brought in some really instant impact guys on defense too. Georgia State's linebacker Jamil Muhammad is an underrated one. Arizona had a corner. Christian Roland Wallace was another guy that I think could go right away for USC. Oklahoma State linebacker Mason Cobb's another one. So a lot of their early stuff in the transfer portal was on the defensive side, and then Dorian Singer was just a phenomenal get. One of the best Pac-12 receivers. I think he led the Pac-12 in receiving, if I'm not mistaken. In a wide receiver room that was loaded. They brought in Jacob Cowing, and Dorian Singer was the best guy in that room, which is really impressive.
Yep, I agree. Do you think that you're a Pac-12 guy? Who's your favorite?
Favorite in the conference?
Yeah, after the portal, who would you say?
I didn't expect Michael Penix to come back, and Roma Dunze to come back for Washington, and they've got a lot of guys on defense too. Didn't necessarily load up in the transfer portal. I don't really think they needed to. Raylan Goforth at USC linebacker, I think that's a good get, but Washington's tough. Utah is going to compete. Cameron Rising's back. I mean, Oregon is definitely in the conversation. USC, obviously. So it is going to be an absolute marathon trying to figure out who's at the top of the Pac-12 like it was this year. I kind of like USC again, but I feel like Washington might get even better. So I think those are my top 2.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think the Pac-12 might be the most entertaining conference next year.
Like ACC is interesting, but those 2 conferences are the very the cannibalistic ones, I think, of the bunch. ACC looked so good to start last year, and then once conference play started, who the hell knew what was going to happen?
Each other.
Yeah. But yeah, the Pac-12 is going to be a lot of fun, head to toe. Colorado, they're not going to win the conference, I don't think, but they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. Oregon State is going to be phenomenal. Arizona State's improving with Kenny Dillingham. That roster looks a mile better than it did last year. So head to toe, and then you got Stanford and Cal, but just about the top 10 teams, I think, are going to be a lot of fun to watch. Cal's got some guys too. So, you never know. They might pull off an upset here or there.
All right. So we talked about the winners. What team do you think is the biggest loser?
Oklahoma State, I think, is the biggest loser, man. They did get some guys. DeJon Stribling from Washington State is a good one. They had Sean Tyler from Western Michigan, and then he flipped to Minnesota, which was kind of unheard of in the transfer portal world. Couple Tulsa guys on defense, Anthony Goodlow and Justin Wright. Those guys are going to fit right in, but Spencer Sanders is a tough loss. I thought he was going to go regardless. Maybe NFL. I don't think he probably would have been a high draft pick by any means, but I thought his career was done.
Yeah, I did not see him transferring to Ole Miss.
Ole Miss is a kind of a weird fit, but that we'll talk about that a little bit because we talked about most surprising moves. That's definitely one of them. Sean Tyler, I think, would have been a really good fit too. There was just, it seemed like every other day you were hearing about Oklahoma State losing somebody. The receiver room got ravaged by transfer guys. Stephon Johnson was a guy I really liked, and he ended up going to Houston. Presley, Green, those guys are really solid receivers, and that offense is going to be kind of gross next year, if we're being honest. I like Strobing, but who's throwing him the ball? Is it going to be Gundy? I don't know, man. Oklahoma State to me is going to be in the bottom of the barrel of the Big 12, which is hard to think about. They've been right there every year. It took a little bit of a step back this year, but I think their roster looks a lot thinner than you're used to seeing from a Mike Gundy led team.
Yeah, and they also lost a defensive coordinator on top of that. So it's there's a lot of work to do. For me, I'm gonna stay in the South. I went with Arkansas. Lost 7 starters to the transfer portal, I think. Got KJ Jefferson back. That's good. But on defense, they just got destroyed. They lost Jalen Catalon coming to Texas. Shout out to him. But lost 3 other defensive backs. It's wide receivers are gone. They lost their number 1 tight end. I don't know what KJ Jefferson's going to be out there just running around.
Well, I mean, Andrew Armstrong is a guy that I think is going to help with that receiver room. 6'6" dude from Texas A&M Commerce, had over 1,000 yards. So he can step right in, really versatile dude. They got Rocket Sanders, with the run game. KJ Jefferson can run. So I think I feel a little bit more confident about Arkansas than I would Oklahoma State for sure. But yeah, the defense was already kind of tough last year, and it's going to look even tougher next year. And SEC's loaded with top offenses, so they might get run over.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like LSU's on the come up, right? They got everybody back. Who knows when Texas A&M is going to figure it out? But if they do, look out. Ole Miss, Bama's obviously going to bounce back. I mean, they could be at the bottom. It wouldn't surprise me if they're last in that.
South Carolina brings back Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, South Carolina's back. Who knows what Florida's going to do. But it'd be tough for them. They might be forgotten about. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what player do you think made the best decision in terms of
one
draft
offense?
stock?
Yeah, I'll go one offense, one defense. For offense, I picked Florida International receiver Tyrese Chambers. This past season, statistically, you look at it and like this, this isn't really impressive, but you watch the film, which I don't know why you really would have watched Florida International this year, but there was just a lot of inconsistency at quarterback. There was a lot of double teaming Chambers, a lot of offensive kind of flaws in the scheme. And Tyrese Chambers did not get the chance that he had in 2021. And I think Maryland is a phenomenal choice. He goes home, Baltimore guy. They lose 3 receivers to the draft. They still have their top receiver and top tight end, so they'll be fine. Talia comes back. I think Tyrese Chambers is going to fit right in, and he can do anything that you want him to do. He's electric, can beat you down the field, intermediate stuff, great hands, hardly drops a pass, if ever. I don't know if I've ever really seen him drop a pass that was anywhere near his hands. So Tyrese Chambers is a good one on offense. Josiah Stewart, for me, on defense is going to be an animal at Michigan. And I love that he picked a school that's starting to pump out defensive linemen in the last, half decade or so. You could argue past decade. Michigan has always a very solid defensive line, and Josiah Stewart is going to be a guy who's really going to stand out. Had a little bit of a down year in 2022, but kind of the same thing with Chambers, was getting double teamed quite a bit. And overall, it's really hard to match the freshman year he had. One of the best freshmen in the country, and I believe it was 21. So I love this opportunity for him. He had every Power 5 school reaching out to him, and he picked Michigan. I think it's a great fit.
Yeah, I forgot that he's at Michigan now.
Yeah, that one was early on in the transfer portal window, so I kind of forgot about that one when I was looking that up.
For me, I went with quarterback former SMU quarterback Tanner Mordecai. Um, he has all the numbers, but he's playing in Conference USA. SMU is not that flashy, right? You go to Wisconsin, he's probably going to be the number one guy. He obviously has to win the job, but he probably will. He has all the weapons. He's in the Power Five at Wisconsin. Could easily win the Big Ten West and be in the. Now I'm not going to say easily. They have a legit chance to win to win the Big Ten West. Play for a conference championship, put his name on the map. If he balls out, it wouldn't surprise if he plays himself into the quarterback conversation in next year's NFL draft.
Isn't that really crazy that we're talking about a quarterback going to Wisconsin willingly and saying that was like a great decision for them? Because SMU, he put up numbers.
Yeah.
Pass happy attack in the American Conference. There was that game. Was that against Houston where it was like 70 to 60 something or whatever it was?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, he put up numbers each of the last couple of years. Very few people were putting up the passing yards and touchdowns production that he was. And it's just funny that going to Wisconsin could even be an upgrade. I mean, the Wisconsin, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess sort of the exposure, the Big Ten exposure is definitely going to help his stock. But Phil Longo coming in as the offensive coordinator might be kind of an air raid in Madison, which what the hell? But yeah, man, they've been getting a lot of transfers. That's another team I think that you could argue won the transfer portal. Mordecai definitely at the top of that, but a lot of weapons on offense. Still got Braylon Allen there. Yeah, I'm liking it. And Fickle at head coach, you got to mention that as well. Helped produce Desmond Ridder, I guess you could say. They were definitely winning a lot of ball games. The Big Ten is going to be a little bit tougher than the American was to trying to get to the top of the Big Ten West. But I think Wisconsin's going to be a great team. And yeah, Mordecai was an interesting one because he entered the portal sort of late in the window, and then he immediately went to Wisconsin. Kind of some tampering, maybe.
There's tampering everywhere, and they immediately got on weapons too. Like you said, they got the kid from USC. I like it. If he balls out, that's how you get to the NFL. So mention draft stock. Which transfer you think will have the best breakout year?
So you mentioned Nebraska, and I think Eric Gilbert is one that is a phenomenal athlete, but we just have not seen him really play much at the college level in the last couple of years for personal reasons or injuries or whatever it is. We're not completely sure. But the dude is massive, and we know that he can ball out if given the opportunity. And Nebraska is kind of a balanced offense. Casey Thompson comes back. Anthony Grant comes back at running back. So can do a little bit of everything. Huge target is exactly what you want. I think his name will get back out into the minds of college football fans after the last couple of years. And a super duper sleeper, if I can. San Jose State, Jay Butterfield, former Oregon quarterback, never got the chance at Oregon, was usually kind of the QB3 back there. But I've seen the man throw in person. This man can throw a ball, and he can really command an offense, can read a defense from what I've seen. I've been, watching practice and limited game action, but I know Siobhan Cordero comes back for San Jose State, so he's probably got that job, but I feel like the job in spring and in the fall might be a little tighter than some people think, and it's going to be because of Butterfield. So speaking that into existence.
Go ahead and get your stock in it now, right? So I was thinking about this one for a while, and I went with Purdue quarterback Hudson Card. Oh. I think that mainly because I've watched him closely. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's a really good quarterback. And the sneaky thing for me, when he announced he was going to Purdue, I was like, why? Like, why are you going to go there? Right. And then I remember that Drew Brees is on staff.
Mm.
And I read that he's returning. I don't know if he is for sure, but I think if he's on staff and he's able to work with Hudson Card, both from Austin, they know each other. I think it'll really help him a lot. Purdue has a decent team. I'm not gonna say the Big Ten West is down, but it's winnable. And I think if Drew Brees can help him, I think Hudson Card is gonna show a lot of people that he can. He's still a serviceable quarterback.
Absolutely. Purdue going with a defensive-minded head coach is kind of a surprise, I think. Like Ryan Walters, to me, deserved a head coaching opportunity, but Purdue, I think, was an interesting one just because when you think of Purdue, you don't really think of a defensive mindset. And especially in the last couple of years with, Aiden O'Connell there and, the days of Rondale Moore for sure were a lot of fun to watch. So you kind of think of more of the offense when you think of Purdue. But with Drew Brees on staff, kind of hate to see Charlie Jones go. It obviously makes sense. But it would have been kind of cool for Hudson Card to have a go-to receiver like that. But Devin Mockabee at running back is going to be a big help. I loved watching that kid play.
Yeah. We got any early predictions for the Big Ten West? Or
I think Illinois. I like Illinois, but they do lose a lot of production on both sides of the ball. So I'm not 100% certain on what they could look like. But to me, I think Wisconsin looks phenomenal on paper. We have to put that out there. I think Wisconsin on paper looks really, really good. Shoot, man, Nebraska. I'm not gonna say that they're back, but I have higher expectations than usual for this Nebraska team. There's still holes. There's always going to be holes in Nebraska, and it is Nebraska, which I used to say as like, yo, this is Nebraska. It's a historic program. They're a winning tradition, but now it's if you're under the age of like 12, you don't know a Nebraska that wins a lot of football games. So, but I'm interested to see what they do. Minnesota should do good. I like what they did in the portal. Iowa, I like Cade McNamara as the starting quarterback. I don't understand why he went there. I don't know. I'd probably put it between Wisconsin and Iowa if I had to. I don't like
this is
the
not
parents.
Illinois. I don't want to see
family.
Illinois. I just feel like
They easily could have won the West this year. They definitely could have. They were very, very close. We were kind of in front of that conference for most of it, along with Iowa. Minnesota had the hot start, trailed off a bit mid-season, but I thought Illinois, I would have liked to have seen them on that stage because they were damn close to beating Michigan and probably should have. And then the one loss that they had against Indiana probably shouldn't have been a loss if we're being real.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Hopefully it's just better football. I hate watching the Big Ten football sometimes. It's so disgusting. It takes a certain level of sicko to enjoy that. It's just not me.
I mean, I'm a guy to watch like 2021 USC versus Cal on that kind of sicko.
Yeah.
That was I think that was like a Sunday or late Saturday game that didn't even matter to the slightest. But I was watching the hell out of that. But Big Ten West is another beast.
All right. Let's wrap it up. What is the most surprising move? There was a lot. What was your most surprising?
There was a lot. Yeah, Spencer Sanders to Ole Miss is definitely one that was really interesting. I'm going to go with Devin Leary to Kentucky. I had a feeling he was going to transfer, but Kentucky originally was a really surprising move just because I felt like there was a better opportunity for him out there. I like to fit with him at Oregon State potentially. That was one I was trying to speak into existence a little bit. But afterwards, Liam Cohen came back to Kentucky, was the former Rams offensive coordinator, was at Kentucky in 2021. Young guy, 37 years old. But he came back to Kentucky and he's now the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. So I like it a bit more than I did when he first got there. I'm not a Will Levis guy. I didn't think that passing offense was too much to write home about necessarily, but I think it's honestly an upgrade. I think Devin Leary, that the ceiling with him is probably not higher than it would have been with Will Levis because he's got the arm talent the arm strength, stuff like that. But I think Devin Leary is a bit more of a polished quarterback. Um, I think he makes fewer mistakes, but I still think the jury is kind of out on him because NC State offenses on paper were getting a lot of hype, especially going into this year. A lot of people were picking Devin Leary to be a top 5 quarterback, and even when he was healthy, that offense was just not helping him. The receivers weren't helping him, and then he ended up getting hurt, unfortunately. But I think Kentucky is originally was a surprising one, but now I think it's a great fit.
Yeah, I agree. I think the SEC is just what we were talking about. The SEC is just getting better and better. You know, you got to keep up. For me, I'm staying in the SEC actually too. I'm gonna go defense. I went with Omar Speights joining LSU.
Yeah.
Did you see this coming? Because I didn't. I didn't see him even entering the tournament. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't expect him to transfer at all because I thought Oregon State was really good. They have a lot of young talent, let alone I didn't see LSU.
Well, I mean, going to LSU from Oregon State, that's a
That's an
hard thing to
upgrade.
pass on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Oregon State historically has not been good at defense at all. They've been awful, switching through coordinators, giving up like 450 yards per game. And then the last 2 years, their defense has been one of the best in the Pac-12, not just better, but they're up there with the Utahs, of the Pac-12. They were up there, and I think they were the top rushing defense in the Pac-12 this season. And so I was kind of surprised that he left, given where the defense was. They do lose some pieces. But I was pretty surprised that he left. And LSU, I think, is a great fit, but they kind of loaded up that linebacker room.
Yeah,
a
they
little
brought
bit
in
with
like 5
transfers.
players.
Yeah,
to play up
absolutely.
front.
Braden Swinson from Oregon as another guy. So they got,
Mhm.
Oregon and Oregon State guy in that room. So that's going to be pretty interesting.
I can't imagine you're lining up. You see Omar Speights, and then Harold Perkins is still there too. Like, what do you
That is
do?
that's nasty. And they did really get on the recruiting trail as well. So I think
Mhm.
LSU is set on defense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you pretty much covered it. You got anything else?
Well, I'll say the least surprising move to me
Oh
was
yeah, who's your
was
least surprising?
DJU to Oregon
Oh,
State. I mean, we knew Oregon State was probably going to go after a quarterback. We knew they kind of should have. Oregon State's never really a team that's super aggressive in the transfer portal. So I guess it was surprising on their end, but not for him. I think that was
no.
a perfect fit. And Oregon State fans definitely wanted him, but the DJ Uiagalelei to Mateo Uiagalelei, because he committed to Oregon. So the Civil War is going to be going to have a little extra bad blood to it with the brother rivalry. You know how competitive some brothers are, and that family, they teach the competitive stuff, and I
Yeah.
absolutely love that family. So the fact that they get to face off against each other is going to be a lot of fun.
You're an Oregon guy. Did you want him at Oregon?
No, I didn't.
No.
No. Well, I know I bet Bo Nix, his situation was up in the air for a bit. But him coming back, I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
If
think
Bo Nix
Oregon
wasn't
needs.
there, I guess.
Yeah, because Ty Thompson to me is still very unproven. Um, I don't know if I'd give him the keys to the offense. And then they had Dante Moore in the fold for the longest time, and then he flipped to UCLA. So the last thing I think Oregon needed was a quarterback, another transfer quarterback. They've been cycling through them. Anthony Brown was too. So yeah, I think they're happy about Bo Nix, to be honest, which is I didn't think I'd be saying that a year ago at this point.
Yeah, I'll go over my least surprising. I think it's K McNamara leaving Michigan. It was clear he wasn't the guy. I think
Yeah.
he fits Iowa perfectly.
Is that a good
So
thing?
I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing. We'll see. We'll see how he does, but that's probably definitely my least surprising one. We all knew him and DJ. They were moving on.
Talked a lot about quarterbacks. I feel like people are going to be like, "Hey, what about other people?" But I give some love. I talked about Tyrese Chambers and Josiah Stewart. So get out of my DMs, future
My
haters,
team,
please.
is what it is. Quarterback in football. It's an important piece. Um, yeah. So you got anything else?
Pretty much that, man. But yeah, just shout out again to everybody who's been tuning in on YouTube. 1,000 subscribers. Kind of stumbled upon that. I was surprising. I was expecting a little bit of a notification like, "Hey, congrats on 1,000 subscribers." We ain't get nothing for that. So
I want a
um,
plaque.
yeah, applied for 1,000. What would that even be made of?
Paper and a certificate.
Yeah, just a printed
Mhm.
like black and white paper to put on the wall. They don't even send you a frame.
Uh,
But yeah, man, it's super cool to see where our YouTube has gone. And I know there was a little bit of a pause in the content. We're working on a lot of things right now, so stay tuned. But the YouTube, you're going to be satisfied with a lot of the content on YouTube coming up very, very soon.
I agree. I agree. So be sure to like, subscribe, trigger the notifications. See you again next week.